What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Knives of the Round Table. My name is Marco, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Alliance Designs Mini Slim Pickins. Now, the Mini Slim Pickins has many different variations. There's the more typical version has an LMAX blade, and I believe it's micarta. But there's one that is full titanium. There's one with different types of carbon fiber in this section of the knife here. There's obviously this version with the damage steel. They have one that they call the copperhead that has the like a copper shred carbon fiber. So there's many variants of this knife. Now, when I was looking into getting the Mini Slim Pickins, I settled on this one because I thought it was very good value. The difference in price between this version and the carbon fiber and LMAX version, it's like $40 or $50 or something like that. So let me give you a tour of the knife, and I'll tell you why I thought this was a little bit of a better value, even if it's not an entirely inexpensive knife. Now, what you have here, it's a small blade. Okay, this is not a large knife. What you have, it's a 2 3/4 inch blade of damaged steel. It's not Damascus, it's damaged steel. And for those of you who don't know the difference, so damaged steel is so a Damascus type steel is just a layering of two different types of steel. But if you take two different crap steels, you end up with a layers of crap steel. Now, what damaged steel has done is they have done a layering of powdered steel. So they've layered two very good steels, and so that's why the damaged steel version, the one that's proprietary, is better than just your typical Damascus. Okay, because if you combine two pieces of bad steel, you all of a sudden don't get a good steel. So it's a button lock, okay? But the difference in this button lock in particular is that it has a secondary detent. Most button locks, when you press the button, they just drop shut completely. Now, as you can see, this one, it's smooth, but it doesn't flap like a typical button lock. Let me show you what I mean by that. So this is the Hoback Sumo. Look, if I move it, it flaps around very easily. Okay, that's what typical locks do. This one, you can't do that because it has a secondary detent. So I'll talk about that when we speak action. Now, this version of the knife is called the heavy metal version, and the reason is because this is titanium, and this is a slab of zirconium, and zirconium in the back. So you get damaged steel and you get zirconium, and you get this really nice heavy metal feeling. It's heavy. And if you follow my channel, I am not a fan of the lightweight knives. I like the feeling of metal, of solidity that comes with a little bit of heft. So I think this is the version that's perfect for me. You got a zirconium pivot collar around here. You got a milled titanium pocket clip, and that's kind of what you have. Let me give you some size comparisons, because again, this is not a large knife. This is against the Paramilitary 3, and here it is against the Para 2. So as you can see, it's smaller than all of these, even if the sharpened blade length is very close to the Para 3. It's certainly in length, it's shorter than the Para 3. Now, it is a thick boy, so if I give you a thickness comparison with the Para 3, you can see that this one is chunky. It has contoured scale, so that helps disguise a little bit its thickness. It feels really nice in the hand, but it is a thick boy. Now let me give you the comparison against the bug outs. Here it is against the full-size bug out, and here it is against the mini bug out. So lengthwise, it fits like right in the middle of those two. Now thickness, obviously, if it's thicker than the paramilitaries, it's going to be thicker than these. You can compare what that looks like. Yeah, also blade stock. Obviously the blade stock on the bug outs is very, very slicey. I think the blade stock, and I'll give you a comparison here, against the paramilitary, it's very similar blade stock to the Para 2. So let's jump into it and discuss it, because this is a knife that I like quite a bit. The ergonomics. Okay, the ergonomics on this knife are kind of bizarre, because my instinct when I hold the knife, okay, it's to hold it right here. That's how my hand wants to hold this knife, which is a little bit strange, because I'm not sure if this large flat is meant for a finger. I think it is, but it's certainly not contoured for a finger. But once you put your finger on it, it feels very, very comfortable in this position. And the only hot spot you get, or at least that I get, is this back corner is pretty sharp and pointy right here, and it digs into my hand right there. I don't know if you can tell, right there it digs into my hand. So that's the only hot spot I feel. I don't feel the pocket clip, I don't feel anything else. Now if I get choked back here, then that hot spot kind of disappears, but it doesn't quite feel as comfortable in this position, especially because, you know, it's still a fairly generous handle, because my large gloves hand still fit here, but I feel like my pinky is kind of falling out here. I think it's more comfortable in this position. Now it does have a fairly generous sharpening choil that is not quite a finger choil, and I think they could have done a little bit smaller choil here. So that's as far as ergonomics. I think ergonomics in this position is fairly good, with one complaint, that is a sharp point back here where this face, that face converge into that point. There's definitely something there. Action. So here's where I was trying to convey. The secondary detent on the Mini Slim Pickins is one. So you do have a detent with just the button lock. Okay, the button lock provides detent just like it does for the Sumo. The Sumo, you can't open it without pushing that button, right? So there's a detent there, which you get here. But in certain states, there's gravity loss, right? Which means that if you push the disengagement and it drops like that, it's an illegal knife. Now this one, you can see I pushed it and it only went halfway, and that means that there's a detent in there that is pressing against the blade. It's causing some friction. So one of the things that a lot of people do is disassemble it and remove the secondary detent. It's just a little bar with a detent ball on it that you can remove with 2 screws, and it comes out, and you can keep it for if you ever want to sell it. And I think that's a very good design, because that way, you know, the people that need it to be legal, that can't have the blade just drop shut like the Sumo does, then you can have that. But if you want to remove it, all you have to do is take it apart, remove the secondary detent, and I think that's what I am going to end up doing, because one of the nice things about button locks, it's their fidget factor, right? The fact that you can deploy them very easily. It's a lot of fun. So I think this is gonna get its detent removed, the secondary detent removed here in the near future. Now, how is the action right now? The action is actually pretty good. what you get is you have a flipper tab, and that's kind of my preferred deployment method, and that's very effective, even if it's like the smaller flipper tab in the history of the world. I mean, well, it's very similar to the one in the Sumo, so maybe not the history of the world, but it's just a very small flipper tab, but it's very effective, and it's actually far more effective than the flipper tab on the Sumo. The flipper tab on this one it deploys incredibly reliably. Now, for closing, you kind of have to give it a little risk to get it to come back because of that secondary detent. But let me also show you this. In the close position, if I hit the button, okay, and I give it down, it does not open because that secondary detent is look. It's holding the blade in place. With a Sumo, if I hold it in the open position, whoop, it just drops open. So that's kind of another I don't know, feature or characteristic of the secondary detent. So the action is actually very good, and the acoustics are very good. There's a ting. I don't know if I'm gonna be able. I'm gonna do it here and see if you can hear it. So the action is actually very, very nice. It's very smooth, it's snappy, but I'm gonna remove the secondary detent to have it just be even smoother and even faster than it is right now. Now, for cutting, it's a decent cutter. It comes down to a reasonably thin edge, but it's not the greatest cutter in the world because it's not a very, very thin blade stock. But the blade shape that you have here, it's kind of a drop point blade, I guess, but you got a tremendous amount of belly. But I found that, for opening packages, it's actually very comfortable to hold in this position and use it for cutting. So in the cutting is, I would say it's better than decent. I think it's good. It's not the sliciest because of its thicker blade stock, but it's actually very good. And and for my EDC task, for what I use it for, most blade stocks work, right? And the fact that it's a little bit heavier and a little bit thicker, it makes me trust my knife a little bit more. A lot of people want the thinnest blade possible for sliciness, and to each their own. But for me, having this is plenty of blade for what I needed to cut, and I like the added benefit of a little bit more longevity or durability because it's a thicker blade. But that's my preference. The fit and finish on this is amazing. There's a lot of details that I think are amazing. So the damage steel is really, really good. So I'm gonna try and show you here. The damage steel is really, really nice. It's hollow ground. Can you see the hollow? And when I do this on a flat grind, let me try and show you a flat grind. I think the Sumo is flat ground. When you put it like that, you see the reflection. The reflection on the entire blade. The light is reflected completely on the blade. So every single, from here to here, you see a full reflection of the light, right? It's because it's a flat plane, so it's like a mirror. When you get a hollow grind, you don't get that. Let me see there. So you only get a reflection on a portion of the blade because it's hollow, and you can't get all of the reflection. So that's when I do that. That's kind of what I mean. What you have here, let me show you again. You got a really nice pivot with these holes milled, and then you got a zirconium pivot collar. You have both things in the back, but you get a Torx head. So I like when they do decorative pivots, but they still do a standard version of the disassemble it. I think that's really, really nicely done. The chamfering is everything you want it to be. It's contoured in this direction, so it feels your hand very, very nicely. You know, the fact that the steel kind of matches this flat on the scale it's really, really well done. The transition area, if you close your eyes, you really can't tell when you go from the titanium to the zirconium. It's just the transition is just outstandingly made. It's just so smooth. So no gaps, no anything. You got a zirconium backspacer as well. So really, really outstanding fit and finish, amongst the best that I have. I have zero complaints. Well, I have one complaint, that sharp point right there. So I think this is a really, really good knife, especially if you're looking for a 3-inch blade. I would highly recommend the Mini Slim Pickins. I think it's an outstanding design and a really good blade. So let me get into the airing improvements. I have a couple, but they're nitpicks. They're nitpicks, and I recognize them as such. But I still want to give you those. So I think that the sharpening choil is huge. It's not quite big enough to be a finger choil, but it's way oversized for a sharpening choil. I think, just if you can make it a smaller sharpening choil and just give me a lot more blade. Look, this is the sharpening choil on the mini bug out. So you could get me probably a 1/4 of an inch more if you bring it back to here and you make a smaller sharpening choil. I think that would have been my preference for this. I do think that this back portion, it's too sharp. Where all of these faces come in, it's transferring in this direction, so it's really nice. It's transferred in this direction very nicely, but when you get to this point right here, they kind of converge into kind of a spear point, and it feels sharper. I almost want to take like a little bit of sandpaper and smooth it out, but I'm afraid to mess it up. So probably not going to happen. But it feels like they needed to round off this corner just a tad bit, so it's not a sharp corner. I think the pocket clip works well. It has a really nice ramp to go in, a really nice ramp to go out. It has fairly stiff retention in there. I think it's an outstanding knife. I just think it's an outstanding knife. So guys, I believe some of the copperheads are available right now in the Alliance Designs website. This one I got from eKnives. I think you can find them in several different dealers. I think you're gonna just have to kind of decide which one you want. If you want the green micarta, the tan, carbon fiber, the copperhead, or in this case the heavy metal, and hunt it down if you want to get one. I do recommend it. I think it's a really, really nice design. And before I forget, so as far as the value goes, this is about $60 more than the micarta and LMAX version. It's about $40 more than the copperhead and LMAX version. So the fact that you get zirconium and damaged steel for only $40 more, I think if you're gonna get a Slim Pickins, in my opinion, this is, they're not cheap. Okay, I don't know, this one I think was $470 or $480 or thereabouts. So they're not cheap, they're 400 plus anyways. But where the value is, I think it's here, just because of the damaged steel and the zirconium. I think those two materials, they're expensive, and the delta between the micarta and LMAX to this, I think, unless you really, really, really like my Carter, right? If that's the case, then don't buy this one by all means. But value wise, and for me, just looks wise and heft wise, this one is the one to go with. So guys, hopefully you liked it. If you did, and if I earned it, then like and subscribe. Don't get notified. Nobody wants to get more emails. You know where to find me if you want to see my content. Until I see you again, take care.